Thank you all so much for being here. The panelists are also all here, and the attendees have started joining. So we have more than 80 attendees already signed in. We are just hoping that in the next minute or two it will increase. So I think we can start. And I'd first of all like to thank all the panelists for being part of this webinar on the management of STPs. I think a very important topic in the current situation and in general. What we are going to do is, my name is Swastik. I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Swastik. I'm a senior lead at the Indian Institute for Human Settlements, Bangalore. I'm responsible here for the Urban Practitioners Program and the Design Lab. I'm trained as an architect, so I'm definitely not an expert in this subject. With that small introduction of IHS, some of you may know our work. We're basically an educational institution, an educational NGO, national educational NGO, and we work in the domain of urbanization and all related sectors. So our focus is on urbanization and education in the urban sector. So with that brief introduction, I'll hand over to my colleague Shubha, Dr. Shubha Muthukumar, who will basically be moderating the session today and introducing us to all the panelists and also handling the Q&A. So I hope you all have a fruitful webinar. Shubha, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Swastik, and welcome you all. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and good night, because a lot of country people are participating. We welcome for this webinar series 1, disseminate and discuss on the issues and challenges of STPs and managing the rectification measures, exclusively what we can do it when we are operating the STPs. A good response from all over the world has come. So this series will continue for a long, so we can be part and interactive in the webinar. I thank Swastik to take an initiative in this and try to put us today here. And all be safe. With this note, we'll start. And I thank all the panelists to engage, because they are going to share their experience. All people have more than 30 years experience in handling the STP. So the real crux will emerge from this webinar. I was very happy to host this webinar from IHS with the support of Mr. Swastik. Our webinar focus on issues and challenges in managing sewage treatment plant and rectification measures for optimal usage. So how we going to proceed this webinar is session highlights, expectation will be, and final we will have a Q&A sessions, and then concluding reflects will be there. All the experts will be 10 minutes duration of the speech, because we cannot drag on the session, but the networking is an important. It's not a one-day solution to all the STPs. So we will highlight the issues, and maximum we try to cover. We have taken 4 important aspects. So we will cover that, and also we can also interact in future, because your contacts and everything with us, so we can do it that. Okay. So I've already introduced, I am Dr. Shubha Muthukumar. I am working as a senior consultant in Urban Practitioner Program. And my domain is on the public health engineering and environment with 20 years of experience in the domain in capacity building as well as project. I welcome you all the participants once again. I think this COVID has shaken from November to till date. The one thing we can talk that our health has spoiled, but other thing is that nature has given this COVID-19, and nature itself has treated the water, wastewater. See the picture of Yamuna, which has emerged on April 5th, and now May 5th, it will, June, it is 2 months ahead, I think, more clean. So it is pandemic clean the pollution, or expect manpower to restore, retain, and treat further. So this seminar is a valuable session. Now, already we are in the position of some neutralization components. So I think the existing STPs and the planning, who are planning the new system, has to take forward from this line. And the important thing is that why this topic is very important for all the field is it people talks only on the airborne spreading and droplet spreading to the nose, eyes, and everything. But the one thing is which is very important is that even there is a significant promise of tracking the COVID-19 train in water supply and wastewater. A lot of research is going on, including in India. India has started an IIT consortium and doing it, and Netherlands, South Africa, a lot of people are doing it. So this is actually a potential source of resource. not only for this COVID-19, I think any pandemic coming in the future, this will be a significant promise for determining the different communities. I think if more virus is there in the sewage, normally the gestation time they are telling it's a 2 hours, but the more it is there, I feel there will be a more type of we can find the trend also how its significance in a particular area. That is why this topic is very important. And when you come into the national program exclusively in India, by rural water supply, by 2024, everybody should have a household. And by 2030, there will be a 30% increase in urban water supply. As everybody agreed it that 80% will come as a wastewater. So there is a big challenges which everybody gets water maximum or minimum, whatever the criteria. So the sanitation is one of a part which we have to be very thinkable. And when you come into whether it's an international, national, state, cities, the public health exclusively contains water supply and sanitation. It's a process of reversible process. So when you construct an STPs, these are the existing STPs has all these problems. A new system, when you're designing, you will have all these issues to be taken care. In this, mainly we are going to focus on today's session is selection of technology, land acquisition, resource recovery, and sludge management, which I marked in here in the webinar series. That is important. And now I invite the session 1, selection of technology by Mr. G. Kondal Rao. He is actually Chief Engineer, retired Public Health, Government of Andhra Pradesh, have more than 50 years of experience in the water supply and sanitation, from the erection to the commissioning and as well as on the treatment part. And he is a World Bank expert, and he's also in the committee for the formulation in the FSM policy. So I now request Mr. G. Kondal Rao to handle the thing, and you can tell us, sir, to go the slides next, so we will operate it.
So, namaskar to all of you. You know, there are certain processes in wastewater treatment, like aerobic processes, anaerobic processes, a combination of those two, and decentralized wastewater treatment plants, FSTPs like that. Under aerobic processes, we'll get suspended growth processes, under which we'll get these waste stabilization ponds, the activated sludge process, extended aeration process, and the sequential batch reactor, and oxidation ponds, oxidation ditches, aerated lagoons, and these A2O process, attached growth processes. Under attached growth process, we get these tickling filters, rotating biological contractor, and these submerged aerobic fixed film processes, and this biophore process, the rotating and under the combined things, we get the MBBR process, this moving bed biofilm reactor, like things. So under the anaerobic processes, the UASB, that is the upso-aerobic sludge blanket reactor, the expanded granular sludge blanket reactor, and the anaerobic baffled reactor, anaerobic fluidized bed reactor, anaerobic filters and contract beds. And combination of the above also are possible in different combinations. UASB plus processing pond, or RDC, or ASB. These are only examples. And there are emerging technologies also, like advanced oxidation processes involving physical or chemical or even biological. And these DVATs for small communities and low maintenance systems, decentralized wastewater treatment systems, which involve normally the settler, ABR, planted gravel filter, polishing ponds, and their combinations. And in small towns and small settlements in rural areas also, or peripheral areas, we can have these fecal sludge treatment plants with biological treatment or thermal treatment. Yes, please. So, what are the factors affecting the technology selection? That's the topic for us now. Under the technical head, we get the wastewater composition and the characteristics. What is the composition of the wastewater? Is it only the municipal sewage, or even industrial wastewater, or agricultural waste also is coming, or any other waste, canneries waste, etc., like that. And the characteristics, what is the BOD, COD, etc., and suspended solids, and the microbial load, etc. And the plant capacity, what is the plant capacity? It also leads to decision on the technology selection, and what are the unit process involved or what are necessary for achieving the effluent discharge parameters. The treatment performance. So what is the treatment performance expected, and the efficiency and reliability of the treatment, and also the various components involved. The flexibility and in the or in the load and the fluctuations in the load. They also will determine the selection of the technology, the extent of flood protection, end use to which the effluent is put to, and relevant standards. So what is the end use to which you will put the effluent? Is it only for agricultural use, or any gardening like thing, or any reuse or recycling to any thermal power plant like what Nagpur is doing, like that. So that also will decide the technology selection. Land area required. What is the land area required? For example, in rural areas, we'll have more land available usually, but even there also the opportunity cost comes in, like in urban areas also. So, but normally in rural areas, we'll have more land. So accordingly, you can select the technology. In urban areas, there are competing uses or requirements. Like it may be used for urban infrastructure or some other auditorium or sports facility or any commercial this thing. So like that, you will have opportunity cost also will have to consider in selecting the technology with respect to land. Power and its availability. It is a very critical area where many treatment plants will be the operation maintenance will be affected. So power lines, availability of uninterrupted power. That's an important thing, like for water supply, and adoption of modular system. So what is the land area available, and can you utilize it for expanding it in a modular fashion? This is a very critical item which we have to consider while selecting the technology. And core area or peripheral area, where you are planning your facilities. Is it in the core area of the city, or in the peripheral areas or slum areas or poor areas, or in rural areas? So that also will decide what is the type of treatment process you will select. And reuse and reuse and or recycling potential, whether it will recycle it or not. So that also will decide the extent of treatment required and the type of technology. Similarly, financial and institutional aspects also come into play. It's a very important and critical aspect, because everything depends on cost and the affordability of the municipality or the local body to maintain the things. So, the life cycle cost, which will involve the capital cost and the O&M cost during its design or its useful life. So in the capital cost, you will get the construction cost and the land cost, the engineering, the cost of engineering design and supervision, interest, etc. And under the operation maintenance cost, you will get the energy cost, asset management, asset replacement cost, and your equipment, manpower, all those things also you will get. And O&M fund availability. What is the fund availability which is available for the municipality to operate the thing? And potential for energy generation. Is there any potential for energy generation out of these treatment units? And the financial sustainability. Whether the ULB has the capacity to maintain and operate it during its design period. For example, whether the municipality has got the capacity to mobilize additional resources and to reduce the existing unnecessary expenditure. For example, in energy efficiency, like that, conservation, etc. So, and the coordination capacity of the municipalities to properly operate and maintain the plant in coordination with the line agencies, like the, for example, the municipality is there. It has to cooperate with the public engineering department, the pollution control boards, and any central regulatory agencies, etc., the industries department, like that. So these are the things we have to consider under the financial and institutional aspects. Next, please. operation maintenance. Under this, we get the ease of operation maintenance. So how easily we can operate and maintain the plant. Need for skilled manpower. Does it require skilled workers? Does it require any high capacity, high technology like SCADA or any other technologies, or any artificial intelligence like that? And energy needs. What are the energy needs for the plant to properly operate as per the design requirements? And failure management. How you can manage it during failures or during disasters? Is it amenable? Do you have any systems available? And the capacity utilization. So what is your capacity to utilize, what is your capacity utilization of the plant? Are you able to run it to the full capacity, or is it underutilized? So depending on that, the energy usage will be there, and the operational parameters and the discharge parameters also will be based on that. Operating and control technology and equipment and spares, and their indigenous availability. This also will decide the type of technology and the components required. Because in one of the actual waste the biomethanation plants, there was a bio engine which was to be imported from Germany, whereas that has become obsolete or defunct. That's why they could not obtain it, and that has resulted in non-revival of the plant. So this is one of the examples. Ease of sludge handling and disposal. So how easily you can handle the sludge? You can have like sludge thickening or sludge dewatering, etc. And how you can safely and effectively utilize the sludge. This is also an aspect under operational maintenance to be considered. So there are important environmental concerns, like which depend on the geography, the topography, the climate, the rainfall, the soil profile, etc. And the impact of the STP on the environment and people, either in the long term or in the short term. And the impact of the effluent, that is the used water, wastewater, effluent on the environment and people in the long run, in the short term, and also on the resources also. We have to consider these things. This is a very important thing because in one of the STPs based on NBBR, there was some sound, that is noise problem, due to the functioning of the blowers, etc. So that has to be, such things have to be assessed upfront, and suitable technology or suitable components have to be selected to suit the circumstances or to suit the requirements. That's very important. And similarly, you have stakeholder perception. Normally, this is generally not that much given importance, but it is extremely important because, after all, the stakeholder, the people surrounding, not only the stakeholders means not only the people, but the people who are actually handling the plant, operating the plant, and the people who are using it or who are in the vicinity of the plant, around the plant. They should be able to appreciate its existence, its use, its utility, and they should be adaptable. We should be able to adapt the technology to the requirements of the stakeholders. Apart from that, there is an aspect of affordability also.
So 2 minutes to go, so that's why. 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, fine. Cultural. Apart from that, there are cultural habits also. Similarly, decentralization and its feasibility. Whether you can locate the plants in a decentralized fashion based on the topography and the demography, that is the population characteristics of the area. All these things will decide the decisions, the decision making. Next, please. DVATs, they can be utilized, that is decentralized wastewater treatment plants can be utilized in peripheral areas, small communities, local local bodies. These are of low maintenance, low energy requirements, etc. Similarly, FSTPs in peripheral areas or cluster level, or they can be located on cluster level or rural areas, etc. Under the fecal sludge management. We can have a combination of technologies also, depending on the geography and demography. Next, please. So we have got this EWAG board, this is the source. So you can, from this graph, you can see as the capacity of the treatment plant increases, the cost of the capital cost also increases. The MBR is the highest, whereas the extended aeration, SBR and DVATS package and MBR are at the middle level, and the soil biotechnology or MBBR come at the bottom. Next, please. In a similar way, regarding the operation maintenance costs also, we have got the SBT, CAMUS SBT and DVATS at the lowest end, that is the lowest cost, whereas the MBR is the highest. The remaining are at the middle level. Next, please. Life cycle cost. That is what counts for us. So the life cycle cost is the lowest for DVATS, that is decentralized wastewater treatment systems, and the SBT, soil biotechnology, and highest for MBR, that is the membrane bioreactor, and a little lower for the extended aeration, SBR, etc. Next, please. So when you see the cost to the consumer, so what is the cost per connection he has to pay per month? So for MBR, it is the highest, whereas and for ASB or SBR, etc., they are a little bit lower. For the SBT and DVATS, it is the lowest. So from this, you can make out some conclusions. Next, please. So the IITs, 7 IITs have conducted a study, evaluation study on the STPs under the Ganga Action Plan, and they have come out with certain conclusions. They have given a graph of it. As a treatment plant footprint, if you can see from this, the treatment plant footprint is lowest for the SBR and the MBBR and the MBR, as you can see. And it is the highest for the upflow anaerobic set blanket UASB plus extended aeration distance, or for the ASB. So depending, so they will, so in that way you can select the technologies as far as this footprint is concerned. Next, please. So they have done a lot of experiments, evaluation. So this is the final outcome of the technology options they have given in the Ganga Action Plan review. So performance we have to see in terms of quality of treated sewage, and the performance, what is the reliability of performance? That is, what is the consistency of the output parameters, the effluent parameters, and the impact of the effluent discharge on the people, on the environment, on the land, on the groundwater, on the aquatic animals, etc. And the potential for economically viable resource mobilization, resource generation, like you can use the search for manure or soil as soil conditioner, and you can use the biogas as fuel or electricity, and you can economically use the electricity for energy generation, the biogas, etc., for energy generation, and you can use this manure for food crops, food crops, etc., or non-food crops. Similarly, we have to assess the impact of the STP on the adverse. What are the adverse impacts on the health of the people, staff, etc., on the surrounding people, and the potential of the potential for low energy requirement, potential for low land requirement, low capital cost, low recurring cost, low reinvestment cost, that is the asset replacement, etc., and low level of skill in operation, and low level of skill in maintenance, and the track record. What is the track record of the particular? For example, you are selecting some SBT or SBR, etc. What is its track record across the country or the world, particularly in our country? Typical capacity range. What is the typical capacity range of this particular capacitor? This thing. For example, in SBT, so far they have been able to construct up to about 3 MLD or 5 MLD, like that. So in under Amrut project of Government of India, we have suggested up to 5 MLD. We have proposed SBT technology, particularly in smaller municipalities like our peripheral areas. Like that, you can take a decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the valuable inputs. We will get connected with you on the Q&A session. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we will have our next speaker, Dr. Jayaramu, KP Jayaramu, Chief Engineer, Karnataka Water Supply and Drainage Board. More than 40 years of experience, and he is a man of 24/5 water supply on the construction of Hubli Dharwad. Now I request Mr. Dr. KP Jayaramu to give the session 10 minutes and grace us too, because we have to compile other speakers also. Thank you, sir. You can go about with this.
Thank you, madam. Good afternoon, organizers, panelists, and participants. So my presentation doesn't take not more than 10 minutes because it is very simple subject, looks simple, and also slides are also very simple. But it is most important subject with respect to especially STPs. Nowadays, this land acquisition process itself is very challenging because of a lot of resistance from the landowners and also inhabitants around. Because of this, especially STP compared to our water tank or water supply installations, this sewage treatment plant means the mindset of the public or the local people around. It is resistive always. So how to overcome that resistance and how to implement that STP without any problem. So those points are addressed in this presentation. So footprint, it's very simple. The total land area occupied by the components of all the STP and the buffer zone. So the land area between footprint area and outer boundary of your land. So simple definition. So how to fix the footprint? Okay, selection of technology. The sir told that, okay, SPR, advanced technologies take minimum footprint. Apart from that, we should be able to arrange all the components properly, including orientation of each component so that it takes minimum footprint. That is very important. So we should not, haphazardly put the components. So carefully, if we do that, we can save another 10 to 15% area. And also we should be able to reserve some space for future expansion of the plant. And so second point is that you have to maximize the buffer zone. So you have to minimize the footprint and maximize the buffer zone. So the generally we can say 10 meter generally put so that the adjoining, people or houses or schools, they should not feel there is STP. So 10 meters, you can say, or more than that. And plantation, flowering plants or, fruit yielding trees, like so that you can attract birds. And also the treated effluent can be used for the plantations. So definitely by doing all these things, there will be minimum public resistance. We can convince the public that, okay, we are doing all these things, we are spending more money on this. So definitely people will agree. So made some experiments like this. Okay, we are able to convince the public now. So we are putting more money on land, maybe 2 times than the required. And also, okay, we can utilize that effluent effectively in raising the plants. And also we can put some, trees, fruit yielding trees or revenue yielding trees so that it will help the local body also. Next one. So, but based on those factors means that what is the footprint required and also what is the buffer zone required. So we have to find the extent of land. Before that, okay, selection of location of STP. So we have to select the STP such that at the end of the valley so that to achieve maximum gravity flow. Nowadays, a lot of pumping stations are coming up. So we have to avoid those pumping. And minimum gravity, if we achieve, the cost of the maintenance will be reduced. And to avoid habitation around STP or to have more buffer. And minimum distance from the river, maybe around 500 meters, I hope, as per PCB standards. And definitely we have to make provision for future expansion. And the extent of STP, as I already told you, by considering your actual footprint, and also buffer zone, and also future expansion. And definitely price of the land. If it is near the urban areas, definitely price will be more. So we have to go for highly advanced technology. And if it is a rural side, okay, we can try SPT or other aerated lagoon. Next one. So there are some case studies. Actually, these are the, case study. Some components are already done and some components we are planning now, we have designed. So this is near, in between Mysore and Bangalore. It's a Madhur town. The capacity of STP is about 5 MLD. You can see the footprint is 20,000. Actually, it is earlier plant, aerated lagoon. Now, actually, we are utilizing this plant to enhance the capacity. So, just we are planning now. And buffer zone, there is around 12,000 square meters. And fortunately, this plant is surrounded by wetlands. So, there is no habitation there. Next. And this is Mysore plant. It is one of the 4 plants, Kesare plant. It is just, on the outskirts. There is footprint because it is old aerated lagoon. There is 1 lakh square meters. And buffer zone about 30,000. Future we cannot reserve because we have to go for advanced technology in the coming years. So, next. So this is MM Hills. Now we are constructing this plant. It is a temple small town, MM Hills. We are going for SBR technology. The footprint is minimum, so 3,000 square meters. And we have reserved another 3,000 for future expansion. And the buffer zone available is about 2,000 square meters. This is also not surrounded by habitation. It is outskirts of the town. So this is actually Arsikere. It is an existing SBR plant. Recently we have commissioned it. The footprint taken is 9,000 square meters, and there is enough space for future expansion, and also this 6,000 square meter for buffer zone. Next. We have proposed SBT in a small town near Mysore. Actually, we have not yet taken up. It's in design stage. There is some problem with the land acquisition. So once the land acquisition clear, we are going to take up this work. So footprint is 2,000 square meters, and actually it has become advanced. It is not future. Okay, we can go for advanced, and we can have more capacity plant with 2,000 square meters. And we have kept buffer zone 8,000 square meters. There is some habitation around this plant. Next one. There is another SBT plant. This is in yet to be implemented. Design is almost completed. So footprint is 3,500 square meters, and there is enough space for future expansion as well as buffer zone. Next. So we have done MBBR of capacity 20 MLD. It has been commissioned recently, about 3-4 months back in Chikmagalur. It is functioning well, but we have yet to receive the full quantity. About 25% capacity is run now. There is enough, footprint is 6,000, and 6,000 another space is there, and buffer zone, enough buffer zone is there, about 12,000 square meters. Next. So this is a small package plant in Shravana-Belagoda. You might have heard of Gomateshwara there. So last, 12th year Mahamasabhisheka, we did this plant. It is functioning very well. The footprint taken is just 400 square meters. Actually, there was a old plant, oxidation pond, which is covering about 4 acres of land. So instead of that, we made this package plant in a small strip of land, and this effluent is used for that area is converted into a lake. There is no problem. It's functioning very well. Enough buffer zone is there. Actually, that road leads to college and habitation. Everything is there. Even then, there is no public resistance there. So they have accepted well this plant. Thank you. That's all my presentation.
Thank you, sir. And it was very good presentations on the land acquisition as well as the footprint, how it has been used from the various MLDs. You told the slides are very less and 10 minutes is enough, but the land is an important thing which we cannot acquire. It's in the rural also today, it's going beeping up. So I feel that in Q&A, if answers can be answered from the participants, if anything is there further, we can go for the next presentation on important thing on the sludge management. Most people agree with me that when we are visiting the STPs, the sludge is will be a problem actually. We can see the wastewater getting treated, but the sludge disposal is one of an important aspect. And the recovery also plays a main role in the sludge aspect. Normally they say is dry it up, give to the field for the farmers, but I don't know how they check the FICO standards and everything. With us, we have a speaker talking on the sewage sludge management experts, a man of fecal sludge management. He have been constructed so many for FSTP. When India thoughts about FSTP, I invite Mr. Arun Kumar, presently a research scholar, but he's working in a lot of positions in different all over the country in different placements, and he was in the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Durban, South Africa, and he's going to handle the sludge management thing. Over to Arun.
Thank you, Dr. Shubha. I hope everybody, it's audible to everybody. Well, yeah, I have been a fecal sludge management guy, but yeah, sludge management per se is a big challenge. The whole idea behind sludge management is why are we actually talking about sludge management? I would want to bring attention to the concept of sludge as a resource and how it can give an value addition to the entire operations of a sewage treatment plant. And from that perspective, managing sludge effectively would help than be a deterrent. And yeah, so that's the whole pretext. So I'm going to basically talk about sludge management, sludge characteristics, what are the basic steps which are involved in the sludge management, and other new advancements and options available. And I would also, since I see sludge as a resource, I would want to link it to circular economy. Next slide, please. Yeah, so why do we need to manage sludge? So as I said, we look at sludge as a resource. So there's a lot of nutrient value in the sludge. We have nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, a lot of micronutrients like zinc, potash, which is present in the sludge. So it's a very important angle, especially if you look at it from the phosphorus perspective. Phosphorus is a mined product, and the resources and reserves of phosphorus across the world is going down. So the more we reuse and recycle sludge as a manure into the agriculture, the better it is. So definitely from that perspective, sludge is of great value. Sludge has got a high calorific value, almost to the extent of up to 30,000 kilojoules per kg on a dry basis. This is again one more critical aspect of sludge, where you can have energy recovery. There's a lot of carbon, there's a lot of volatile organic carbon in a sludge, which you will see in the subsequent slide. And this is another aspect. But then the challenge, of course, is you just cannot take the sludge directly and use it. If it was that easy, I wouldn't be speaking here. So sludge has got its own nature of being a biohazard. So if disposed or if not managed properly, it can cause a lot of problems. The more severe problems of sludge would be in the aspect of its biohazardous nature, as well as the heavy metals. The smaller STPs generally don't have too much of an issue with the heavy metals, but as the STPs become bigger and larger, heavy metals is a big concern. Yeah, you have all kinds of microorganisms which is pathogenic, as well as protozoans and other organisms which are a challenge to really manage. Next slide, please. And now, in the context of COVID-19, Very interesting times. I've been following the wastewater treatment part in the last about 4-5 months, and no other time was wastewater treatment so very important than this time when everybody were locked down in their homes and consuming water completely. So the STPs, I suppose, were all fully loaded with the load which they are designed for. But more critical is about the virus itself. This type of virus, the RNA virus, is generally there are two aspects to this, which is of critical concern. One of the aspect is that this virus can stay for up to about 2 days in temperatures at about 20-25 degrees Celsius. So that's a critical aspect, which means that the virus is active in the wastewater as it reaches the STPs, and also as it gets treated in the STPs, the virus is still active until the disinfectant stage, of course. The other important characteristics of this type of viruses is the hydrophobicity of this virus. That is, they have a high tendency to adhere to the solids part than the liquid, which means once we have dewatered or taken the sludge out, the chances of having the virus in the sludge are great than in the water. So this means the sludge handling has to be even more critical from the virus spread aspects also. So next slide, please. So as you can see, the characteristics of the sludge, the main important factor which kind of differentiates a sludge from sewage is the total solids content. So we have high sludge as compared to sewage. Otherwise, most of the parameters are similar, except in its strength. In the sense, the BOD of sewage is say 200 milligrams per liter. Sludge would be about 25,000. 30,000 milligrams per liter. So the scale is different, but the characteristics are similar. The important factor, again, as I said, is total solids. So you have somewhere between 0.5% from secondary sludge in an activated sludge process to as high as 7% from the primary sludge. So this is the range of solids which we get from the primary sludge. And the energy content also varies somewhere as low as 18,000 to as high as 30,000 kilojoules per kg. So most important aspect when we are looking at designing different systems for management of sludge. These will drive your decisions. Also, the factor that how you want to actually reuse the sludge and recover the most out of it. Next, please. This is a broad mass balance diagram which I tried to put in, more looking at what are the different inputs coming into the process, and then once the process is complete, where all can the sludge be, or the processed sludge can be used. So basically the input is the raw sludge from the STP. If there's any transportation involved, the transportation, and some process chemicals and energy as per the process which you have adopted. So once done, you have byproducts which have different utilities. One major utility is, of course, as based on its nutrient value as a manure, but besides that, based on the calorific value as energy also. This is just to illustrate that it touches almost all aspects of different phases of the energy requirement as well as the nutrient requirement. Next slide, please. So yeah, these are the fundamental steps involved in sludge management. The first step usually in an STP is to thicken the sludge, and then we look at stabilization or digestion of sludge, then dewatering, and finally how do we reuse, and of course the ultimate part is the disposal. Next slide, please. So for sludge thickening itself, most of the STPs usually have a settler. So which is usually one of the most cost-effective, low-energy way to handle achieve the thickening of the sludge. But besides gravity thickening, you can also take up centrifuge thickening, as well as air flotation thickening, which are more efficient in terms of increasing your solids content. So, for instance, your gravity thickener would give you a concentration of up to about 10%, but your centrifuge would give your total solids up to about 20-25%. Air flotation technology gives up to about 15%. So based on how efficiently do I want to manage my sludge in the preliminary stage, the different approaches can be adopted. Next, please. These are some of the photographs of different thickeners. So have the general gravity settler, which looks more like a sedimentation tank. And then you have the air flotation system, different types of air flotation system. You have diffused air flotation, which is actually far more effective in terms of getting the sludge together out of the system. Next, please. So post thickening, you need to stabilize the sludge. This is one of the most important steps because the sludge at that stage could be relatively unstable in terms of its own characteristics. So giving it a good retention time, either aerobically or anaerobically, can make this sludge stable. So most of the STPs kind of adopt an anaerobic process for stabilization. The great advantage, of course, is because you get an energy out of the system, which almost makes the entire process self-sustaining in terms of the energy load. So, but of course, smaller systems, and again, going back to the footprint logic, you have low footprint systems, which are aerobic systems. Next, please. And yeah, post this, we have the dewatering stage. Basically, dewatering means solid liquid separation. So here we try to achieve total solids to up to about 35% to 40% solids. So most of the steps involved in this, or most of the processes involved in this, are mechanical in nature, either be a belt press or a filter press, or a screw press, or the volute press, which is quite extensively used now. Smaller STPs generally prefer filter press, though most of them are not operated. I think it's high time that we get them operational, simply because of the value it brings in. Some of the steps which are involved in dewatering are, you need to chemically condition the thickened sludge, which means addition of a polymer, which will kind of coagulate and flocculate the sludge particles. And then post that, we have application of mechanical energy, which will force the water out. So we can go very deep into this because the sludge has got the concept of unbound water, the bound water, and the water between the molecules. So there's a lot of science behind this, but I will restrict just to the major steps here. And then post dewatering, we could see how we can utilize the sludge in different options. Next, please. So some of the equipment which are used in dewatering, you have a centrifuge and filter press. As I said, the reuse again depends on what we want to do. For instance, if we want to have a class A kind of biosolid out of the system, completely pathogen free, then the sludge has to be treated with a disinfectant. And the best disinfectant for sludge as of today is to treat it thermally, which will take care of both the pathogens and the elements depending on what temperatures we are going to achieve. So that's one of the reuse aspect. As you can see from the different modes of reuse, agriculture really takes up about 45%, whereas energy component is also about 27%. So there's quite a significant movement now across different STPs to really utilize the sludge as a resource and not really throw them out or do open dumping or disposal into the sea. Next, please. These are some new other advancements, like you can go for thermal drying, pelletize the sludge, and then use it as a fuel for different applications. You can use it as an incinerator or a gasification plant, generate electricity. Of course, in cold countries, you also generate heat as a resource, or convert the same heat into electricity, and then also generate biochar, which is again a phenomenally good soil conditioner, especially with its fixed solids to about 25-30%. It's very good application is to hold nutrients to itself. The absorption is phenomenally good. Pyrolysis is another technology which is again looking at energy generation in the presence of limited oxygen, and wet air oxidation is another upcoming technology, again specifically looking at how do we recover phosphates out of the system. Next, please. A small insight into circular economy. There's as would have seen in the last few slides that I've been stressing more on how the sludge can be kind of reused, recovered for its own value which it carries, the nutrients and the energy. From the phosphorus perspective, this becomes very, very important, that we can bring it back into a circular economy kind of logic, recover energy, recover phosphorus, recover the entire agriculture system itself, and in the broader, longer run, address the food security aspects of it. I think with this, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. Next, we have a session, final session by Mr. M.N. Tippaswamy. And he is retired as a chief engineer, Bangalore Water Supply and Sewerage Board, and have a lot of experience. Now he's an advisor and consultant to many organizations. He's the one man which I have seen his CV that a lot of funding to Bangalore. He brought it in the different area from Australia, UK, and JICA is the first, the name is different that time, Overseas Funding Foundation. He brought the first funding for the Cauvery projects and everything. So a lot to share with him. And he will be discussing on the where it's a possibility to recover the resources and resource recovery and untapped resources. That will be also connected with this. And he's the first person to conduct an energy audit in complete water supply systems in Karnataka, we can say. So now over to Tippaswamy sir. Kindly share your screen. And to participants, kindly put your questions in Q&A box.
Oh, first of all, good afternoon, good evening, I can say. I think it's very pleasant to speak after three speakers have dealt with very important subjects on selection of treatment plant and footprints on land acquisition, and lastly the treatment of biosolids. What I'm going to talk just now is about the renewable resource from wastewater, or what is known as resource recovery. I think what we can straight away try to discuss is what is the advantage of wastewater. The advantage of wastewater is a resource. We are only putting a small chemicals into our usage and make it pollute that water, and we are supplying this wastewater. This wastewater, particularly in the municipal sector, municipal wastewater will have only 1% of pollutants, and 99% of wastewater is only sewage. Fresh water. I think what we have to really look at, how best we can recover this water, is something what we have to really seriously think of. In the context of today's scenario is water is such a important from the point of not only from Indians' perspective, from all over the world, the availability of water is getting reduced because of the huge population growth and climate change and urbanization. These are three important factors which are making it very difficult to meet the demand of water in any urban area, particularly in urban areas. And today, The urban area is almost, see, in Indian scenario, it is almost reaching 36%. And by 2030, it will be about 40% of people will be living in urban areas. I think, of course, if you go back to the world scenario, it is going to be 70% of people are going to live by 2050. So keeping this in view, I think wastewater is a resource and it should be recovered. That is the first point. Apart from that, from the last this 21st century, we are seriously looking at what are the renewable resources and what are the byproducts out of this wastewater. I think wastewater, see, byproducts are basically, if you look at, energy is one of the very important component, and second important component is a nutrient. So we have to see, in order to make it a circular economy, what my previous speaker has said, I think from a linear economy, we should get into circular economy, and whereby the utilities can certainly sustain. So this is exactly what I like to introduce to you. So first of all, water use is economically feasible and attractive when there is a potential for cost recovery by treating wastewater to a water quality standard acceptable to users. I think we are a different type of users. We have users for agriculture, you have users for industry, you have users for non-potable purposes, maybe various activities in urban usage, and last even for potable usage. I think I will deal with more in depth on this water. At present, and the other important recovery is what we are looking at. At present, the possibility of nutrients and energy recovery are among the most advanced in terms of technical and financial feasibility. So we have to really look at it. Is when you look at the first presentation which made in selection of sewage treatment plant, I think most important component of that is energy. See, in the conventional, in the different type of sewage treatment plants, we have low-cost treatment plants, and see, we have conventional treatment plants. See, when we are going for a conventional treatment plant, the energy is going to be the very critical factor, and what quantum of energy is required for each one of the process is something really has to be looked in. I think energy in the present context, Indian scenario, we don't have the required quantity of energy, and even if it is available, cost is every year it is increasing because of the non-availability of energy, and also secondly is the costs are increasing at 10% every year, and that is going to be one of the very important factors. So that how best we can recover this energy from biosolids is something what I'm going to talk about. Lastly is the energy recovery from the business potential in terms of reducing energy use operational cost and its carbon footprint. So climate change is one of the very important factors where, see, carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, these are creating, we are under climate change, our position in the world is, say, first is China, second is USA, and we are in the third position. We have to reduce this emission of greenhouse gases into atmosphere, and seriously we have to look at, this is one of the area. In addition to recovery of this nutrients, I think carbon footprint also need to be looked at. I think this slide will show you human exit. As you can see here, see, waste flow is there. In that, what are the different components that are there? See, like human excreta, detergents, organic residues, animal manure, etc., etc. And then finally, if you look at see what is recovered from these sources, see, energy, and see out of the energy, biofuel and production of that, and then the energy from heat recovery also we can recover energy. So then another important is nutrient. As I said, phosphorus is another important recovery, organic matter for as a fertilizer. Water, I think this is the most important. I think these are the three important components what I said. I think we should really look at, see, not only building wastewater treatment plant, but we have to incorporate in all these sewage treatment plants a recovery of these important components. So let me start with so these four R's. See, reducing, removing, reusing, and recovering. These are the four important components in wastewater. And see, these are all wastewater is a valuable resource. So in continuation of that, I think what I'm trying to say is, see, the prevention or reduction of pollution at the source in terms of pollution and of the wastewater produced. So what we have to do is we have to reduce even the generation of wastewater, reduce your usage of water in your residential houses or the other industries, etc. That is one part. And also regulate the contaminants in that. See, you see what is happening in Bangalore and Hyderabad and other places. Froth is coming in a big way. I think, see, in a year, almost 8 to 9 years, big froth is coming and people are suffering because of that. And that is creating a lot of nuisance. So this is because of a new added chemicals into the sewage. So the second important thing is removal of contaminant in wastewater streams. In operational systems collection measure, the treatment process that removes various constituents of wastewater and that it can safely use for return to the environment. And these are the several types of levels of wastewater. I think we have various types of treatment which Mr. Pandal Rao has already spoken about this. And this is actually a removal of contaminants with different type of technologies that are available. But at the same time, when you do that, you should also recover these byproducts. The use of wastewater, that is reuse of wastewater. I think this is everywhere, every part of the world is speaking on wastewater use. Safe use of treated or untreated wastewater, controlled conditions of the beneficial purpose, historically used primarily in irrigations. Of course, see, as I said, irrigation is one major usage over a period of centuries, but at the same time now this can be utilized even for portable purposes. See, other than non-portable purposes, we are in most of the cities in India, they are already trying to use non-portable purposes. In fact, Bangalore has started well in advance for using this wastewater reuse for non-portable purposes. And today we have almost 2,300 decentralized treatment plants at different locations of the multi-stored complexes, high-storage buildings, and academic institutions, etc., etc. So this is the third use, and fourth is the recovery of useful byproducts, as we already discussed. So this recovery of phosphorus and energy are the two important components in this whole setup. But what I'm trying to talk to you in this particular this short presentation is recovery of energy and see this nutrients. See, this is starting with reducing and prevention is pollution prevention and minimization of wastewater flow should be given a priority or traditional after use of treatment wherever it is possible. Second, I think second as removing pollutants, as I said, collection is most important because we have to keep a network very healthy in terms of no wastewater should flow outside. So that is what entire network should be kept in operation, maintenance of the network should be there, and that wastewater generated should reach the treatment plant. I think we have a natural flow, natural treatment. We have earlier, as I said, see, the wetland treatment was there was conventional stabilization plants, mensuration plants, oxidation ditch, etc., etc. They are all conventional, low-cost treatment. Now we have a highly treated, very high quality of treatment, conventional treatment plants, starting with the trickling filters, activation-led process, sequence batch reactor, etc., etc., which all showed by Mr. Pandal Rao. I think we should really look at how best we should treat this wastewater to meet the required standards where, see, if you are to recover this water for non-potable purposes or industrial requirement, etc., etc., I think to that extent it should be done. So as I said, centralized versus decentralized. If you go back to 2 or 3 decades back, we are all looking for centralized treatment plants, taking away the treatment plants from outside, and huge treatment plants are there. Today, if you go to around the world, if big cities have more than 2,500 to 5,000 MLD sewage treatment plants. I have recently visited plains, Blue Plains in Washington, which is 2,400 MLD, etc. So these are centralized plants, but whereas decentralized plants are small plants, as I said, Bangalore itself has 2,300 plants, and these are basically working for institutions, educational institutions, commercial institutions, etc., and also the huge housing complexes. So these are all the various alternatives. I mean, where these alternate uses that we can think of. One is industrial usage. Today, there is already a message, zero discharge wastewater. That means wastewater should be recovered and used on a regular basis by the industries themselves. And second important use is that is used for cooling water. Particularly here in this, I want to specify that out of the wastewater is very much required for power generation, whether it is coal power or any type of power generation except renewable energy like solar. The other requirements of energy, I mean, the production of energy for cooling water, etc. This water is very much required. See, huge quantity of is very much required. Similarly, agriculture use. For example, in Bangalore, I think wastewater is now 400 million liters plus is supplied to Kolar, for agriculture reuse. I think feeding to several lakes around Kolar, and one more project is ongoing, that is Chikaballapur. See, these are all two major projects which are supplying to agriculture. Perhaps you are aware. See, Israel is one of the best cities, best country in the world who uses almost 85% of wastewater for their agriculture, and they are planning to go for up to 90% by 2030. So this is one of the very important area also in our country, because there is a lot of we use a lot of water for agriculture. I think if we can supplement this wastewater through that, that is something. Groundwater recharge, this is also very important. I think managed aquifers are very much there. I think even for potable water also, there are many instances where people are, I mean, many cities are using this, putting back into the aquifer and taking back and using for drinking purpose. I will give you some examples later on. I think urban usage, even for portable purpose. Now, this is one of the very important in the present context, when cities are growing so big and we don't have resources. I think they are going for reuse, for portable purposes. What is happening around, in Asia itself, Singapore, Australia, two big projects. One is almost 40% of wastewater is now reused for drinking purposes in Singapore. And 232 MLD Western Corridor project is happening in Australia, etc. I think apart from that, there are a lot of other urban usages are there, which are used for non-portable usages. Now, coming back, this is a recovering of useful byproducts is methane. As I told, Arun Kumar already mentioned that methane is one of the very important factors. Almost 65% of gas that is generated from anaerobic digestion is a methane, which can be converted into, which can be fed in after removing other gases. We can directly inject into the gas engine and generate power. Now, many countries, almost 100 plants in the USA and many plants all around the world are having energy neutral, and they are not taking even 1 unit of energy from from the grid, and they are running their own generation of energy. There are plants which are generating energy and feeding back into the grid and making money. I think I'll give you some examples for that also. Second important thing is recovery of phosphorus, which is a fertilizer, which has got a very, very important nutrient which can be used as a fertilizer. Phosphorus is one particular element, I mean chemical, which is not available, which is only 5 or 6 countries like Morocco, Australia, USA, and these 5-6 countries only. It is told that the phosphorus mineral is not available after a few decades. I think that is a stress, and in that context, the recovery of this phosphorus from wastewater is plays a very important role. And ultimately, the biosolids can be made use for as a fertilizer. I'll give an example here. See, the Accra in Ghana, they are using the agriculture usage, etc. as I told you, see, there is a lot of work has been done in Kolar. You can go through the, website, and Kolar, which is recently about 1 year back, they have commissioned, and a lot of they are also growing a lot of different type of vegetables, etc., etc. And this is exactly what recovery of wastewater recovery for portable use. And the planned indirect portable use, this is exactly what is being done in Singapore. And this is the first country to showcase. And now 40% of wastewater is used for cooking purpose. They are planning go up to 50% by 2060, where they have completely their agreement between Malaysia will complete. So that is exactly 50% they are going to. Other 50% is by their storm water and also by their desalination process. Since other is direct portable use.
So 1 minute to go.
Sorry?
1 minute to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a recycled water. See, where people are in Singapore using recycled water for manufacturing beer. So this is what are the different type of biogas that is available? How we can use biogas? What are the impacts of that, and how it is helping for climate change, etc. And this is examples of recovery of energy neutral Vienna project, Denmark, Oakland in California, etc. These are all beyond zero. And anything, these are energy neutral are something what I have mentioned. These are foreign countries, and these are all Chennai, Bangalore, New Delhi. They are also generating power. Say up to 70% in Chennai. Bangalore is doing 1 megawatt power. In where almost 60% they are generating. In Delhi, the 70%, etc. This is a sketch of sewage treatment plants in Chennai. 5 sewage treatment plants are generating almost more than 7 megawatt of power. And this is Illinois. I think this is a Stickney wastewater reclamation plant where they are producing this phosphorus. It's a very huge project, and this near Chicago. And this phosphorus is recovered from the wastewater, and you can see that how this Chicago Stickney wastewater treatment plant is producing this. This is not a burden; it's a valuable resource. I think. Thank you. I think there is a lot more to be discussed. I think this is a minimum requires more than 1 hour 30 minutes to explain each one of them. But definitely, so this recovery of resource is most important in the present context in 21st century. Without which, I think water, energy, and nutrients. I think if we can't do that, I think we are, even the planners and the institutions should seriously think whenever they want to go in for a plan, they should seriously look at these areas before they could really approve their plan. Otherwise, they should not take it up. I think that should be there. Otherwise, we are making people to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a great insight. I understand there is a lot of things to be discussed. It's a preview, so we can go with further long. And until COVID continues, we'll have the webinar. So next, I request all the panelists to put on their videos so that we can have important Q&A questions, which has been bumped. Most of us, it's answered by the panelist. Remaining thing is there. So we can discuss and open to all the panelists. Specific, I will mention the specific to the concerned panelist so that you can answer. Otherwise, we can normally, one person can take as a volunteer and do it.
One gentleman has asked, can we consider the climate change related things are greenhouse gases, etc. in the sewage treatment, this thing, and how they will affect it like that? Actually, it's a very relevant thing because the sewage treatment plants may be emitting the greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide or whatever it may be, and even USB plants, etc. based on aerobic treatment, they will also emit the methane, etc. If we properly utilize them by either reusing them or recycling them, for example, the methane can be converted into energy. like that. So if we can utilize them, the greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced. Similarly, for the aerobic technologies, we should try to reduce the energy consumption as much as possible. So by doing so, by improving the efficiency of the treatment processes, etc., by doing so, we can reduce the carbon footprint on the planet.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. There is another one question, the important question to KP Jayaramu, sir. Can you please suggest, will it be good preference to use combination of rotating by biological contractor and ABR, ASSTP for the urban treatment process? Mr. KP Jayaramu, sir?
Actually, RBC combination, I don't know exactly, but in the Indian context or in our state, this RBC, nowhere it is done. I think that can be tried because one is attached growth system and another is anaerobic system. Okay, that can be done, I think.
And,
I think Mr. Arun Kumar can answer, elaborate this.
Maybe just adding to this from my experience, maybe a combination of anaerobic and aerobic is a good STP and sewage treatment approach in general. So given that you want to take up ABR followed by RBC, I think it should be a good approach. If you look conventionally at how say DWAT system works, you have an ABR and then followed by a constructed wetland, which kind of has a media, and you have the plants which give does the biochemical reactions there. So from just drawing comparison with that, I think this could be a good option to work, ABR followed by RBC.
And then there is one more example, ma'am. In Mysore, there is a small agency. Actually, he is introducing media, which is used in MBBR. That media is introducing into aerated lagoon or oxidation ponds and all, so that to increase the specific area and to increase the efficiency. So they are trying for smaller plants. It is almost similar to MBBR, I think.
Okay, thank you. There is next question. I think there is a 3 question posted in a similar fashion. It's the same question, it is repeated. I think any panelist can answer voluntarily, because why there are no design standard for sewage treatment plant for apartments in India? If there is any, abroad may share. This is question number 1. Can anybody answer?
I think many of the many entrepreneurs have come out with designs for STPs, but there may not be approved designs like that. For example, the soil biotechnology, CAMUS SPT, has been implemented in many apartments and the residential complexes in Mumbai, and even Hyderabad, HCU also they have constructed. Like that, there are technologies available, viable technologies, which are appropriate for small settlements, small populations. They are there, but we have to see whether there are any approved like things. We have to verify.
And the same person has asked another question, with that I'll do it, that why the sewage treatment plan of apartments are approved without design validation? Even RERA Act speaks about that now, but still because of which most are found improper design and technology.
Yes, it is a very valid point. It has to be verified and approved. That's better.
There is any state is following, sir, during our approval of plan, the STP design should be validated by concerned specialist to the site?
To my knowledge, in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, it may not be there. But I think in Karnataka, if it is there, I think the concerned persons may respond.
Okay, Jayaramu sir or Tippuswamy sir, because it's a very important question.
See, basically in Karnataka, every sewage treatment plant which is supposed to be taken up has to be approved by Pollution Control Board. And they also vet the designs before they give approval and for implementing the project. And in the context of designs for this multi-stored complexes, you have to simply see basically the complexes which are already built doesn't have required space to implement those treatment plants. That is one of the major criteria. I think, as I have seen many places, see when the government has made it mandate, many people are represented don't have a place to implement that. I think this is one of the criteria. Of course, we have to really look at, depending upon the circumstantially, what type of treatment process is going to fit in has to be decided based on the available land.
Okay.
So even in other states also, there should be some stipulations that a particular apartment having such and such population should be having an STP like thing. There should be there, even in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana also. But at the level of urban local bodies, verification maybe may not be happening. That's my take. But AP PCB or Telangana PCB may be looking at it.
Thank you, sir. There is another question. What challenges ULBs from not opting for DVATs? Given its indigenous form, low capex, low O&M compared to other available technology, Arun can answer this.
It's not a sludge management question
No,
per
it's
se, but
DVATs.
yeah.
DVATs.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the main challenges with DVATs per se is for the ULBs to really take it up. Is its one would be its footprint. It's a bigger footprint than the other plants. Two, it is I mean the kind of confidence what it is given per se is not too high. There are some DVATs which are working phenomenally well, but there are a lot of failed DVATs across the country. So when the engineer has got to make a decision, make a choice, he or she would be more comfortable taking up something which is kind of industry established technologies like an ASP or an SBR than go for a DVAT simply because somebody may question his or her decision later. I think that is one of the bigger challenges, but otherwise some of them have really taken up on their personal capacity and have implemented such passive treatment plants. I'll not say DVATs per se, even SBT has been done in Borivali, which Kondal Rao was talking about. So they are all taken up by the urban local bodies. So it is possible. It just needs more confidence in the system by the people who are actually front ending it.
Okay.
Even Mahabubnagar also has taken up this one of the DVATs. Small municipality like Mahabubnagar. There are some interventions which have to be followed up.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next question is, this is a general. Every sewage course when we are running, we will get this course as a first time. Most of STP are not operating due to fund crunch. Can you throw some light on that issue? And to add this question, I have one question. What type of contracts in the STP works? More STPs in the country in the arbitration between the government and the private players due to some other reasons, whether it's an electricity, can any model can work? Like now they brought the hybrid model for this. So I feel these questions will be relevant. Fund is important, no? Without fund, they cannot do it. What is the answer with the panelist?
I'll answer the second question, ma'am.
Okay. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
So with regard to contract, actually we have done a couple of special contract like in Shravanabelagola, I told So in that contract, I have added 10 years maintenance by the contractor who made the plant. So he's he'll be there for continuously for 10 years. So in the project itself, he will take a lot of care in construction of the plant properly, and he has to maintain for 10 years. So and one more second plant we have done recently in Kollur. So that's also there. So 10 years maintenance or more than that. So that may be the answer, because your STP of any technology, it will function well. It depends on your maintenance. So for maintenance, you have to fund it. Funding and maintenance, both interrelated. Thank you, ma'am.
So,
thank you,
sir. To continue, even under the AMRUT program of Government of India, in Andhra Pradesh, for all the STPs, we have put 10 years maintenance as a precondition in the tender contract itself. So
in Karnataka, there is 5 years minimum. So it is good that 10 years is better period.
Yeah, in fact, regarding the funding, most of the municipalities are cash-starved, as a matter of fact. So, selection of appropriate technology in the appropriate place, this is extremely important. So, where it is necessary, where it is feasible, these DBATs are feasible, we have to go for DBATs. Where decentralized or conventional STPs are necessary, we have to go for them in the core areas like that. In that way, we can strategize these things so that we can reduce the operation maintenance costs substantially. Then the municipality should be able to maintain them in a reasonable manner, in an effective way, complying with the standards.
The collection of user fee in case of UGD, STP maintenance or UGD maintenance is a big challenge, because in our state, there are only few cities where this user fee is collected, like Bangalore, Mangalore, Mysore. And other small towns, they are not collecting any fee. So now we are insisting ULBs, wherever there is new plant, to collect user fee so that they can maintain well. They collect water fee, that is water supply maintenance fee, not sewerage. So that has to be there. Every town and city, there should be user fee collection. Then only they can maintain well. There will be fund. No government will give any maintenance grant.
Yeah.
They will give any amount for projects, not for maintenance.
Yeah.
So we should be able to build the plant such that the maintenance fee should be minimum, so that it will not be a burden to ULB.
Thank you, sir. The final question is, it's a general, everybody asking from yesterday once this is posted. Centralized versus decentralized. This is a switch, whether we go with decentralized or centralized.
I think we have to go for a combination of those things, depending on the location, the context, the topography, and the demography, and the affordability. All these things play when you take a decision. We have to go for both, a combination of those.
Other panelists also, you can answer. This is a final question.
Yes, sir. We agree with Mr. Kondalwar, because finally the availability of land, madam. If there is a very big land, okay, you can make one plant. I don't think such places are available. So we have to go for multiple plants, depending on the city economic condition or something like that.
I think I also agree. It is not that you should look at centralized versus decentralized. It is centralized and decentralized. So it is complementary to each other and not competing with each other. So in general, when most of the people talk about decentralized, they're so passionate about decentralized that they try to show that centralized systems are bad. Not necessarily. It is equally good. So they are complementary and not competing with each other.
Swami sir, your comment?
Yes, sir. That is correct, actually. Actually, we can insist decentralized plan for commercial units like hotels, industries and all, so that, okay, we can put burden on them. They are affordable. And small institutions, small scale, urban, slums and all. So there we have to go collect sewage and may have to go for a bigger plant. So it is a blended method. We have to follow both the methods.
So, sir, final comment.
Sorry?
Final comment. It is you. Centralized versus decentralized in one word.
No. If you look back, I think what is most important is, in 60s when we proposed a sewage treatment plant, we installed 3 big sewage treatment plants at Rishabhati Valley near what is known as Rajarajeshwari Nagar today, and one is at old HL Airport, and third is at Hebbal Valley. These are 3 big centralized sewage treatment plants. But coming back, subsequently, as I said, I think land is one of the major constraints. One. Second, if you are really thinking in terms of a small town and a city, class 1, class 2 cities, you should seriously look at, in terms of a decentralized plant. Basically, what I am trying to say is, this water has to be recovered and used for the purpose, non-potable purpose, and that is the key in the days to come. Where is the water for many of its towns and cities? Many towns and cities are giving 5 days, 1 week water supply. I think they should try to see These are going to be the challenges in the days to come. Particularly in Indian scenario, where is the water? I think that is the key issue. I think no doubt we have a combination of all these things, but getting a land in metros and also class 1 cities is a big challenge. See, of course, we have 50, 75, 80 MLA plants are there, but not now. We cannot build this plants more than 150, 200 MLA, and all that is not possible to have such a huge land for at a given place. I think what is most important is demography. I think you should get a place where you need it. I think that is something very, very difficult. I think only in the new constructions where the cities are growing, there you can think of this centralized versus combination of centralized and decentralized.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to all the panelists and attendee sessions. There is a mixed response. This is a series 1 seminar. So we have made some of a session highlighted. So we will discuss in future on the energy pattern, efficiency and everything. We have given our email ID here. So you can write to us so that we can connect to the network. You cannot solve the solutions. You have to learn. A lot of STP, the theory is one. When you go to the system, it will be different. So the practice is important. All these people who are panelists, they have practiced more than 40 years. So they know the crux. You know, I have seen some of the people taking the sewage itself. They'll say, what is BOD, COD? That level of people are there. The thing is that we should use proper technology. I understand a lot of constraint is there in the governments as well as the public-private partnership mode. But still we have to do it because in future sanitation, as Arun completely said, when the water is going to be more, there should be wastewater is generating should be more. So there should be some even optimization in this to usage for 135 LPCD. I thank you all for all these people all over the country who have been participated. Keep in networking with us. And now I request Swastik to end the.
Yeah, no, there's not much left. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the panelists, and thank you all so much for attending.
Thank you.